failed to disclose important programs to them. So now that it's impinging on their turf and their rights, Congress seems willing to exercise oversight responsibilities, but I still see the mainstream media as pretty complacent about what you reported.
Well, I don't know the answer. I thought it would have generated a much bigger response from the mainstream. Perhaps they don't believe me. The folks at NBC told me that I was on 2 nights. After the first night, they called NSA and asked for a response. And NSA's response was, well, we're not going to give you any particular, response, but, you've got to understand your source. This guy's not the most stable guy, and, we've had problems there. So in other words, by discrediting me from the very beginning and saying that I was mentally unstable, that was intentionally done, in one respect, to make sure that there was always doubt in people's minds as to, this guy's, he's as crazy as a loon kind of thing. It was done on purpose way, and so you'd have to call the mainstream press folks and ask them why they're not interested, and perhaps maybe it's because of corporate sponsors and corporate, defense companies that are involved with some of these communication companies that are worried about their government contracts. I don't know the answer.
Well said, and we will follow up on that. With the latest that came out on cybercom, Ross, you wrote a piece, and you consider the assertion that Stratcom will be in control of this new cybercom as complete and utter hogwash. Can you expand on that?
Well, they're talking about supposedly they're going to cybercom or cybersecurity and cyber communications. It obviously is very important. I'm not saying, oh my goodness, we should not protect our cyber communications, because that would be rather silly. We know that our country is attacked by entities, whether they're supported by countries or not. That's speculative, or some people do know, whether it's coming from China or Russia or North Korea or wherever. But to give that capability to NSA, well, actually they're saying they're going to send it to a strategic command in Nebraska. Well, Nebraska does not have the capability to do that. And even General or Admiral Jones or whoever said, oh yeah, well, NSA has a bunch of really smart people that know computers. Oh, they do. Oh, they certainly do. They know so much about computers that they could take that capability, use the information warfare capability along with it, and not only be able to tap everyone's computers, which they've already done, by the way, but also be able to inject information warfare capabilities within the capability to tap everyone's computer. And that is just, considering NSA's, what I would think, lack of credibility in the crimes they've committed against the American people, is very scary. NSA should not be trusted. Not at all. And we've shown that the Congress has shown, and our current president has shown, that they're not willing to bring forth the oversight that was lacking in the last administration. So here we have a rogue agency, NSA. They've lied to the American people. They've committed crimes against the American people. This most recent IG report that's out, let me tell you, that's probably as watered down and whitewashed as can be. That's not going to tell you the true truth. So why would we trust NSA in the future to have responsibilities in a field that is a lot more dangerous than collecting and warehousing communications?
Now, Russ, what you just described, the ability to tap into individual personal computers, is that under the Echelon program?
I can't go into details on...
Okay, that's public information going back a few years, so...
Well, that's speculation is what that really is.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. But if, for example, Jim Bamford, in his book, The Shadow Factory, and James Bamford was our guest on our first Boiling Frogs episode, he described the massive collection of telecommunications and email. And so my question would be, if they already have all my phone calls, my phone records that they can data mine, my banking records that they can data mine, and they're able to intercept email traffic and also, using my IP address, find out what websites I have visited, and possibly with a cooperation of Google, they could find out what topics I've searched. Why would they also need to be able to access my computer? What additional functionality would that give?
That would be involved with some programs that are highly classified that I cannot discuss, that involve information warfare.
Okay. Okay. Jim Bamford also reported that there are two companies with ties to the Israeli security structure, Naras and Verint, that supply some of the hardware and software for the intercepts that Bamford describes in his book. Do you have any comment on that relationship? Number one, that we outsourced some very critical and highly sensitive tasks. And number two, that by doing that with Israel, which of course is seen as the factor, the provocative factor for many of the problems that we have with Middle Eastern nations. What is your comment on the role that those Israeli companies play in our security efforts over the last 10 years?
Well, it's not uncommon, unfortunately, that we're starting to outsource critical capabilities in some of our technical systems. Not just are we going to Israeli companies, but we're going to Taiwan to have some of our critical microchips being developed and sent there that go into defense systems and intelligence systems capabilities. And we're even getting things from China. And so we're basically outsourcing a lot of these things to other people. Yes, Israel's one of them. Now, Israel is considered one of our allies, which I would think is a good thing. Now, the other problem was, we know that China is number one in spying on the United States. But what they don't tell you too often is the number two country that is spying on the United States. Everyone thinks, oh, that has to be Russia. Well, no, it's not Russia. It's actually Israel. So, there are friends, but they're kind of keeping an eye on us. So, it's definitely something to be concerned about. If it was up to me, all critical components for all our critical systems in defense and intelligence would be stamped USA made in the States here with red, white, and blue-blooded Americans. I wouldn't have any of it overseas, personally, but the way manufacturing is, we've just outsourced stuff mainly because we don't want to pay Americans a fair wage to do this work, and it can be done a lot cheaper in other places.
Here. We could outsource our crimes now.
You and I spend a lot of time going and knocking on those doors in Congress, whether the Senate or the House, and trying to get their attention to the issues that you were willing to discuss with them within the secure facilities and by congressional committees and members who had the clearance, trying to bring their attention to all these illegalities by the NSA. And we did all that, and lately we found out about one of those representatives, Jane Harmon. What was your reaction to that? I mean, here we found out about Harmon actually trying to save the NSA. She actually called the New York Times and asked them not to run this story, and so on and so forth. And here is this one representative, one of many, that we try to in quote, inform.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think things are so pervasive that NSA has an awful lot of things on an awful lot of people. Plus, you have representatives that may have been briefed on some of the elements of some of these programs, and now that the nasty details are coming out that they ultimately equate to crimes that were committed against the American people, that all of a sudden these people that may have known, they want to pretend they didn't know and try to do a Pontius Pilate, wash their hands of it. And so they're, in my opinion, a lot of them are afraid that it's going to come out that that they knew, and or some people may have some dirt on them, sort of like the Hoover and the FBI. Let me tell you, NSA operates the same way. NSA security office is vicious. When they get a hold of information, they would blackmail anyone on a heartbeat. So I think some of these politicians are being blackmailed. Some are being paid off by telecommunication companies. For instance, that vote we had last summer, it would be interesting to find out the Democrats that voted for that telecommunications retroactive immunity and how much money the Democrats received versus how much money they'd received from telecommunication companies, in the years past.
Well, Russ, let me just give you a quick snapshot, and this is